Good morning. It is still morning. I'd like to call the Finance and Ways and Means Committee to order for April 20th, 2022. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representatives Campbell, Camper, Crawford, Faison, Freeman, Gant,
Here.
Garrett, Gillespie, Hawk, Hicks, Hodges, Lamberth, Lynn, Miller, Ogles, Sexton, Shaw, Sparks, Todd, Whitson, Williams, Wendell, Zachary, Vice Chairman Baum, Chair Lady Hazelwood. Madam Chair,
Here.
you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just today, I appreciate this is a fluid in our process, as any of you who've spent time here know. We're continuing that tradition today. At this meeting, at this time, we will only be taking up the appropriations calendar. So if you're in the audience and you have a bill that is on finance full, but is not a part of the appropriations calendar, then we will take those up at some time later today, time to be determined. And Chairman Zachary, I believe you have an announcement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, there seems to be a little bit of confusion about when Calendar and Rules is meeting because we have some colleagues that are waiting for that committee to meet. We will not be meeting in Calendar and Rules following this meeting of Finance. We will recess in Finance and be back this afternoon. Calendar and Rules will meet this afternoon after Finance, just to be clear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further announcements or personal orders? Seeing none, we'll get underway.
Thank you, Chair Lady. All right, members, we are on the appropriations calendar. We're on item number 1. This is going to be House Bill 2882 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. Do we have a motion to second? We have a motion to second. You are recognized, Chair Lady Hazelwood, and it looks like there are 7 amendments that have been filed on this bill. So we will begin with amendment number 1, and I have drafting code 017648. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We have a motion to second. You are recognized for a description on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just the stripper amendment, which would allow us to reset the budget if we needed to do that.
All right, members, you've heard the description of the amendment. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on amendment 017648 on to House Bill 2882. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. That brings us to amendment number 2. Amendment number 2 is going to be drafting code. This is by Chair Lady Hazelwood. And Chair Lady, let's just check this drafting code again. It's going to be 013999. Is that what you have?
That is correct.
All right, members, we have a motion to second on the amendment. We have a motion to second. Chair Lady, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, this is the administration's amendment to the appropriations bill, which all of our members, and it's been a public out for public view for quite some time. With that, I would just move approval of the amendment.
All right, members, you heard the description of the amendment. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on amendment 013999 on to House Bill 2882. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. We are on the bill as amended. All right, that brings us to amendment number 3, also by Chair Lady Hazelwood. Chair Lady, let's just check this amendment drafting code. I have 014000. Is that correct?
That's what I have, yes.
All right, members, do we have a motion second? We have a motion to second. You're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the legislative amendment to the appropriations bill.
All right, thank you very much for the description. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion on the amendment 014000?
Okay.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like for the sponsor of the amendment to go over the amendment. We've gotten a different schedule today. I want to make sure we're looking at the right schedule. Maybe she can talk through for people who were not in budget subcommittee to explain kind of what's in this amendment so people can get an idea of what's in the amendment, because we have a separate schedule that just was handed to us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Leader Camper, for bringing that up. And let me just let the members know, as well as the audience, that all the new documents are out on dashboard now. I think there's some sheets down front for those that are in the audience, but I can assure you we will take our time later. Once we get the amendments put on, we are going to go back over this bill as amended. So you will get every opportunity to have any questions you have answered. You're recognized.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman, but the point I'm making is there are people on this committee that has never seen we have not went over the amendment that we're talking about right now, and then there's going to be an amendment to that amendment. So I think it would be helpful for members to understand what's currently in this amendment so that we can do a comparison as to what's going to change in the amendment. I think it's good due diligence for us to do that.
Okay, that is perfectly fine. We can do that. So we will let Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Leader Camper is right. There are a couple of major changes. We'll talk about those from what we discussed yesterday in Budget Sub. So we'll start at the beginning, kind of work through. First of all, I want to continue to point out, we mentioned this yesterday, but I think it's important to note that while this year's budget, 22-23, the state budget that we're looking at currently is $52.8 billion. For perspective, the total budget last year is $51.2 billion. There's been some conversation and some confusion because the initial budget that we passed for 21-22 was only $42.6 billion. There's concern about the amount of growth in that budget, but I just want to make it clear that change was primarily due to the recognition of over $8 billion in federal COVID relief funding that was realized after the passage of the budget and had to be recognized. In addition, there were some additional revenues and that sort of thing, but the FY 22-23 state budget also includes federal funds appropriated through the American Rescue Plan. And one of the things that we've talked about frequently in finance and other places is the fact that we have all of these federal dollars that are skewing, and to what degree we really don't know at this point, but skewing our budget. And when those dollars are gone, the impact on what's remaining is yet to be seen. So that's one of the reasons that we're going to be extremely conservative with our budgeting, even though we have these dollars available. So first of all, everyone saw the AA. It was out for quite some time, so I'll just take a minute and walk through some of the major changes, the legislative initiatives, things that we listened to our members from the General Assembly and on our friends in the upper house, or the other house, the House of Lords, or however we're terming them today, the things that we as a body were interested in and therefore made changes in the budget in order to fund. But and there are just a couple of, they're small in terms of the budget, but they're still, significant. And there might be questions about that I would go over. There was in the governor's budget, or in the AA, there was a grant or monies for technical assistance for sentencing reform. This was for a vendor for a contract, and they've indicated that they'll be able to complete their contract without this additional funding. So we repurposed those monies. In the governor's budget, there was $150 million for violent crime intervention grants. We have now reduced that, and this is a change. This is a change from yesterday. But with further conversations, we were concerned about there was a lack of specificity, that was a difficult word to get out, a lack of specificity, if you would, about how these monies would be spent. We've had additional conversations, so we're restoring $100 million of the 150 to the budget, and we'll be taking those dollars from the $640 million plus that are set aside in funds that we've not yet recognized. Dairy grants, we talked about this yesterday. This is not a slap at our friends in the dairy industry, but there is just not currently a mechanism to monitor or to distribute these grants. So we repurposed those dollars as well. And we did on the violent crime intervention grants that I mentioned, we're putting language in the budget that will put some parameters around how those funds will be used. Basically, they will be available in a grant pool for law enforcement, and you'll see more about that in the budget language. There was $135 million that was set aside for COVID funding when we were still unsure as to what that pandemic was going to do to our costs and needs. Those dollars have not been used, so we are allocating them in this budget. There was $200 million initially proposed for moving schools in Tennessee out of the flood zone. We have taken $180 million of that and reallocated it for a number of reasons. One being that it was very difficult. There was the list of schools that would apply to was kind of a moving target. There were questions about how it would be addressed if part of a school were in the school zone, not the entire school. There were just a lot of questions about that. So, but what we did make sure that we did, it was leave $20 million from those funds in the budget, up to $20 million for Humphreys County, for the Waverly schools, to make sure that the state would have last dollar in, but there would be grants up to $20 million again to cover cost after insurance and federal disaster money and any other funding had been applied. We changed some things from recurring to non-recurring to help us with our budgeting process, including tourism marketing grants and TEMA. Rural opportunity grants have had some questions about that. We did remove the additional dollars that were in the AA, but there's still a base, $228 million in the base. A similar thing with Fast Track. We took the recurring dollars, but they still have $85 million in non-recurring funding in the base budget. The biggest thing that I think we would, as a legislative body, should focus on and be extremely proud of are the tax cuts, the tax relief for Tennesseans. And there's something in this tax relief, this package, if you would, of tax relief for every Tennessean, beginning with, and the total, let me make sure that everybody understands that, along with the governor's $82 million that was already funded in the governor's budget for the sales tax holiday in August. In addition to that, the legislative amendment includes $220 million in tax cuts, and it's actually a little better than that, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. The professional privilege tax, we're eliminating physicians. That's a $9.7 million tax cut, and that is consistent with the process that we've used in trying to eliminate this on a gradual basis. We have eliminated a number of categories previously, and we will continue to work on that category by category. This year, we're eliminating the physicians. Broadband tax credit, as you know, there's maps were, I believe, out yesterday that showed the needs for broadband in the state, which are many. There are broadband grants available with federal funding and other dollars that this legislature has set aside for that purpose to try and get everybody in Tennessee who wants to be connected. Those grants have a 3-year lifespan. We are asking providers to work within that 3-year period to make sure that we get as many people online as we possibly can, as quickly as we can. With this broadband tax credit, we're really giving an additional 10% funding on those grants, because prior to, the providers would have had to pay sales tax on materials, installation, and those things. With this tax cut, with this tax relief, then they will no longer have to pay that tax. So there's 10% more from the grant money that will be able to go directly to broadband. All right, sorry, if you can't hear me out there, raise your hand or give me a clue. I'm happy to adjust. But the broadband grants are for a 3-year period, matching the broadband tax relief is for a 3-year period, matching the grants, and that's $68 million a year. So in addition to the $300 million tax cuts in this budget year, there's another $136 million that will be applied in years 2 and years 3 toward that broadband tax relief. We have, for a number of years, we have heard from our retail vendors who send dollars to the state every month. They collect sales tax for us. At one point, they were paid a fee for doing so. Several years ago, that was changed, and currently they get no compensation for doing that. So we're putting in, and this is non-recurring, on a 1-year basis, there's $11 million set aside to give those vendors at least some compensation for collecting those sales taxes for us. That'll be at $25 per month per vendor location, with a maximum of $300 per month, no matter how many locations that you have. And one of the things that I think, at the end of the day, Tennessee is still an agricultural state. And our code has, for some time, in terms of agricultural taxes, been a bit of a hodgepodge. We have tweaked it, and we have added things here and there, but what we have not done is make the code match with changing technology. Agricultural technology has changed just like any other industry. So this bill will, or this budget will fund a bill that will make the agricultural tax code mirror what we do for manufacturers. And that is, if it's part of the process, then it will not be taxed if you're a certified farmer. We also are removing the sales tax on gold coins, bullion, and collectible paper money. And this is a big one. This will help every Tennessean who owns a vehicle. License plate registration for 1 year, the state portion of that fee will be waived. There'll be no state cost for tags for personal vehicles for 1 year for your personal vehicle, for your motorcycle. We also, because of some aggressive auditing, we have been collecting sales tax from computer services. And again, we can have a discussion another day about that aggressive auditing and how that came to be. But we're removing that tax in this budget, and that's $6.4 million recurring money. We also are continuing the exemption on gun safes for another year. That's $320,000. In addition to those tax cuts, we're doing a lot of things that are going to help our local governments and our local communities. We're putting $1 million in a grant pool for county and regional fairs, and this is added to what the governor already had in his base budget of $500,000. We're putting $1 million in competitive grants for senior citizens statewide. This is a $600,000 increase over last year. We're putting $1 million for universal adult changing table grants. We are putting $5 million into a pool that volunteer fire departments across the state will be able to access for equipment and supplies, and $2 million for rescue squads for the same purposes. The Epilepsy Foundation will be receiving $900,000, $300,000 per Grand Division for their work, $350,000 for the Boys and Girls Clubs, $500,000 for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. These will be statewide. There are a number of other initiatives that will be funding in this legislative amendment. There's $18 million that will be used to construct and establish the Tennessee Entrepreneurial Science and Technology Hub at UT Martin. That is it's a cradle to the grave, if you will, educational process where you'll be able to go to this facility. You can get a certificate. Then you can get an AA if you want to, an associate's degree, and then you'll be able to move forward and get a bachelor's degree if that's what you want to do. And that is going to make a huge difference for educational opportunities in rural West Tennessee, and hopefully it's going to help to prepare workforce for what's going to be happening at the mega site with Blue Oval. Launch Tennessee, we're adding $1.5 million for grant funding there for the entrepreneur centers and mentor networks that they have across the state. I think most members have seen the results of those mentoring and those centers very positively with what's happened with new business growth, small business growth in our state. We're also continuing to work, the issues that affect our state include workforce development and just workforce availability. We're working that with a number of ways. In the base budget, you saw it. In addition to that, there's $950,000 for the Associated Builders and Contractors to establish a pilot program so that they can make sure that they have, these are well-paid jobs, well-paid trades. They just need to be able to find the folks to fill them, and this will help them do that. There's a lot of things in the health and social services category, nothing that we didn't go through yesterday. Hopefully you all have had a chance to either watch the video or you've seen it in the AAs or the legislative amendment. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through that. If we have questions, then we'll be happy to answer any of those. Another thing that is related to law and safety and is going to make our folks back home happier is that we will be increasing the local jail reimbursement rate by $2 a day per inmate. This budget provides for funding to implement truth in sentencing that's going to require violent offenders to serve 100% of their sentence. We're also funding additional DAs to bring the total up to 32, which matches the number of judicial districts across the state. As always, I think we have a good idea of what we're doing for education in the base budget. We have the TISA that we will be discussing in this committee, in the subcommittee next week. There's other things in here, including the expansion of Tennessee Promise Scholarship, the addition of Dollars for Hope, and monies to establish a uniform grading system that'll make Tennessee students on par with surrounding states when their GPAs are looked at for admissions into colleges. Again, I think most of the other things have been discussed yesterday. You have them on your list in front of you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would just stop and ask for questions.
All right, thank you, Chair Lady. Leader Camper, any?
No,
You're-
Mr. Chairman, that's fine.
Okay,
I don't know
Representative Miller. All right, Leader Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For several years now, I've been working on this professional privilege tax, and Chair Lady Hazelwood, I just wanted to verify that there's two professions for doctors under this portion. Does this include both of those occupations? And I got to be careful because 4 years ago I said this word the incorrect way. There's osteopathic, and I think 4 years ago I called it osteopathetic. So I'll make sure that I get that
Not
right.
cool.
But there's doctors and there's osteopathic, correct? And both of those are coming out, correct?
Chair Lady.
Yes, osteopaths and MDs are both taken out of the professional privilege tax pool.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Lady.
All right, further discussion. We are on Amendment 014000. Representative Freeman.
Thank you. In looking at the amendments that we had yesterday in this and what's in here today, the biggest reduction that I see is the Tennessee Sheriff's Association. Can you talk a bit about why that was removed? Enhancement of victim information and notification every day, or VINE system, year 1 of 3.
Chair Lady.
Yes, and that is the changes that we're going to fund. There was a bill regarding this. We had put it in as an appropriations amendment. We should have been funding the bill, so the language will take care of that. We're still going to be doing the project. It's just that it will be done via bill versus an appropriation.
Very good. Thank you.
Further discussion. Seeing none, we are now voting on Amendment 014000 to House Bill 2882. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Back on the bill as amended. That brings us to Amendment number 4 by Representative Sexton. And Representative Sexton, I have drafting code. Let's just make sure this is right. 017693. Is that what you have, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. We have a motion and a second on the amendment.
Motion.
Do we have a second? We have a second. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this does, it deletes section 55, item 3, which reads as follows, and renumerating the remaining items accordingly. Item number 3 is hereby appropriated to the State Funding Board for interest and reduction of the state debt for debt service expense and interest on the proposed bond authorization, amortization of authorized and unissued construction bonds in the amount of $55 million. It is the further legislative intent that the proposed bond authorization be for the purpose of making a grant to the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County to construct a dome sports stadium. The state's contribution to the construction of the stadium shall be in addition to contributions by the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County and of the National Football League franchise tenant of the stadium. What this does is it removes that section. And the reason for that is I don't think that taxpayers should be put with the burden, by the way, which this is just the interest on the debt. $55 million is the interest on the debt for the bonds. And I don't think that the taxpayers should be burdened with this tax debt. I think it's unfair. It's unfair to the people in my district and many other counties that'll never benefit from this. There will be a select few of people and organizations that will benefit from this, and they'll benefit from the taxpayers' dollars. So in my view, I think this is unfair to taxpayers, and I would encourage you to vote for this amendment.
All right, thank you, Representative Sexton. Any discussion? Again, we're on amendment drafting code 017693. Any discussion? Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to my friend, we've served together many years, and I understand all of your points, and that will be a discussion we can have on the actual bond bill. And if the bond bill were not to be successful, then the debt service would not be necessary. But it simply wouldn't be fiscally prudent to take out the debt service projection, which I believe is projected at 11%. There's virtually no way that if a bond were to be issued, it would be at 11%. But we put it at that level, and we've always done this on any bond. We have virtually no debt as a state. I mean, even if this bond were to be issued, we would still be one of the lowest state, if not the lowest state of debt in the nation. That's a good thing. But whether or not we issue the bond is something we will all debate and decide. But if the bond is issued, the debt service needs to be reflected in the budget to preserve our good, solid credit rating and everything else. And so, again, with all due respect to the sponsor of the amendment, I would move this amendment to the table.
All right, we have a motion to move amendment 017693 to the table. We do have a second, which cuts off, this motion does cut off all debate except for that of the sponsor. And with that, Representative Sexton, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with the leader's words completely. I just don't feel that we need either. You made the point that we have no debt in Tennessee, and we're very physically sound, and I think moves like this is going to put us in some of the same shape that other cities are that are nearly bankrupt. We can look and see that the city of Nashville does not have the money, and we wonder why. And the reasons is the policies that they put forth are not coherent with what that we do as a legislative body. And if we're going to be consistent and be a state that stands for physical sound policy, and then we start adopting these same policies that other states and other cities do, then that puts us in a situation where that we're gonna be looking back 10 years from now, and we're gonna be saying what happened to us. And people's moving to Tennessee because we are successful in the way that we spend our money. This is a bad way to spend money, and you're putting it on the taxpayers' backs to fund this stadium. They make billions of dollars a year, and you want to take people that makes $40,000 and $50,000 a year and make them pay for this. This is unethical. It's unsound, and I asked Leader Lambert if he would at least remove his tabling motion so that we could have a debate about it.
All right. Representative Sexton, of course, the motion does cut off all debate. So at this point in time, we will have to take a vote. So again, folks, we are voting on the tabling motion. So a vote of aye is to table, and of course, a vote of no is to not table. So at this time, all those in favor of tabling amendment number 4, which is 017693, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no.
No.
The ayes have it. Motion is tabled. The amendment is tabled. Let's go to item number 5. Item number 5 is going to be by Representative Ogles. Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. This amendment would fund House Bill 1640, which would add rape as the one of the offenses that a defendant is not eligible for probation under the Tennessee Crimes Sentencing Act of 1989. But after further discussion with members of leadership, there's some technical corrections that need to be made to the piece of legislation. So I'm hopeful that this will be taken up next year. So with that, I will motion to withdraw.
Thank you, Representative Ogles. You heard the motion. Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, amendment withdrawn. That brings us to item number 6. Item number 6 is going to be amendment by Representative Miller. Representative Miller, you have drafting code 017768. Is that correct, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is that drafting code correct, Representative Miller?
Repeat that one.
17768.
That is correct.
All right. Do we have a motion and a second? You have a motion and a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is pretty much explanatory, requesting at least $2 million to cover for HBCUs, Fisk University, American Baptist College, Lane College, Lemoyne College, and Knoxville College. And purpose for those fundings is for recruitment and retention of those African-American students.
All right. Thank you, Representative Miller. Members, you've heard the description of the amendment. Any discussion? Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative Miller, for your amendment. I will also applaud you in your efforts, as you also had a similar appropriations amendment that Appropriations Committee considered this year. As you know, the base budget this year includes $250 million for historically Black colleges and universities in the state. And I know you and your, I think Representative Love had worked diligently to try to get that additional funding for those schools. And so when we looked at the appropriations and we knew that we had invested those monies in these fine institutions here in our state, we chose not to appropriate those funds. So with that being said, I make a motion to move this amendment to the table.
Second. All right. A motion's been made to lay amendment 017768 to the table. It has been seconded. This motion does cut off all debate except for that of the sponsor. And with that, we will go back to Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask for consideration on the amendment.
All right. Thank you very much, members. We are now voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor of tabling the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Motion prevails. All right, members, that brings us to item number 7 on the amendments, which we have an untimely filed amendment. So we will have to entertain a motion to consider. Do we have a motion to consider? You have a motion. We have a second. We have a second? We have a second. You're recognized. Well, let's vote on that, actually. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on the motion to consider Amendment 017774. All those in favor of considering say aye. All those opposed, no. The noes have it. The motion fails. All right, members, that brings us back to the bill as amended. Chair Lady Hazelwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did an overview yesterday. We went through the changes today. With that, barring any further questions, I would just ask for your passage.
All right, members, any discussion? We are on the bill, House Bill 2882 as amended. Any discussion? Question's been called. The objection calling the question. Hearing none, seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2882, moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2882 moves to calendar and rules. All right, that brings us to item number 2 on our calendar. It's going to be House Bill 2883 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. We have a motion to second. You are recognized, and it looks like we have 2 amendments that we need to get onto the bill. We'll begin with amendment number 1, which is drafting code 0101700. Chair Lady, is that correct?
That is correct.
We have a motion to second on the amendment. You have a motion to second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This entire bill as amended is just what we need to do to make the statutory changes necessary to implement the budget. This first amendment deals with the requirement that proceeds from sale and conveyance of surplus real property or improvements used for operations of state prisons, if not managed as state office buildings and support facilities revolving fund property, be deposited in a reserve for correction facilities within the general fund to be used for capital outlay replacement facilities of the Department of Correction and other capital outlay of the department. And it also establishes that the state employer 401k match equals 200% of the amount contributed by each state employee to the plan per month, up to a maximum of $100 per month. In subsequent fiscal years, such employer match reverts to the previous calculation. So this is a 1-year bump up in the match. Again, something that we're able to do because of the budget situation, the positive budget situation we find ourselves in. And it also exempts from the sales tax on retail sales of food and food ingredients any such relevant transactions occurring between Monday, August 1st, 2022 and Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. This is simply the food tax holiday.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Members, you've heard the description. Any discussion? Chairman Wendell, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, could someone please explain to me how the agricultural sales tax exemptions have been expanded, either in the governor's budget or by an amendment? If you could clarify that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is in 2882 that we just passed. The agricultural sales tax code as it exists today in statute has a various mixture of things that are exempt from sales tax, and it's a bit of a hodgepodge. It's been tweaked over the years, with an item here and an item there. This is basically an overhaul of that tax code, and it is modeled on what we do for manufacturers. That is, if something is used in the manufacturing process to get to the finished product, then that they don't pay sales tax on that. This same would apply for agricultural, in that if it's something that he is using to get his product grown to market, whatever, then if he is certified with the Department of Revenue, then there would be no sales tax applied to all those items.
And thank you for the explanation. The reason I asked the question is there are 2 farmers sitting in Monroe, Tennessee that just asked me to clarify that. And I appreciate your answer, but let me make sure I can condense this. Is it accurate to say that any input that goes into the production of agricultural products in Tennessee will be tax exempt 100% for any input that goes in the production
of any final agriculture product will be tax exempt. And this is their question, and I think it's a fair question. Is that a correct conclusion?
Chairman Wendell, we are going to go to Joel Hayes at this time. So,
And members of the committee, I don't mean to belabor the point, but please remember, these rules have to be implemented by people who actually work for a living and don't have the luxury of pontification. So when we speak about these issues, I would request that the committee speak in terms, and I'm not saying bring it down, but speak in lay terms so people who are listening to this presentation on the internet can understand in common parlance. I would appreciate that. And that's not a criticism of any discussion on the committee, but sometimes we come off a little bit scholarly or lawyerly, and people that actually work for a living have to implement these rules.
all right, thank you, Chairman Wendell. We can do that. I think our legal is looking that up, so we are going to let him find that answer, and then we will come back to that. But in the meantime, we're going to go to Representative Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question would be, is there anything now that is exempt to the farmers that would not be exempt under this present change?
Okay, Representative Sexton, and I think that question goes right along with what legal is determining right now. And I'm not getting. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to recognize Joel Hayes.
Joel Hayes, Office of Legal Services. Chairman, this provides a rather broad exemption, specifically states that a tax is not due from the sale at retail, lease, use, consumption, distribution, repair, substances used for agriculture when sold to a qualified farmer or nurseryman. And so it's goes on to specify that define a qualified farmer or nurseryman as a person who is engaged in agriculture and meets one of the more of the following criteria: owner or lessee of agricultural land from which $1,500 or more of agricultural products were produced and sold during the year. Person is in business of providing for hire custom agricultural services for the plowing, planting, harvesting, growing, raising, or processing of agricultural products. Person is the owner of land that qualifies for taxation under the Agricultural Forest and Open Space Land Act. Person's federal income tax return includes Schedule F, profit or loss from farming, or farm rental activity on IRS Form 4835. Substances, basically the items that are will not be subject to the tax, includes items used for agriculture, including but not limited to materials, buildings, structures, fences, appliances, drugs, equipment, accessories, aircraft, computers, hardware, software, computer systems, warranties, technology, manuals, parts, hoses, pipes, appurtenances, labor, seeds, fertilizer, agri-sawdust, backup power infrastructure, pollution control, energy, water, chemicals, fluids, solvents, greases, heating and coolant systems, and machinery. And then it also includes items that perform the actions of agriculture, including but not limited to cultivating, irrigating, producing, housing, protecting, fencing, harvesting, transporting, packaging, storing, repairing, raising, carrying, fertilizing, fueling, fabricating, pumping, maintaining, oiling, lubricating, feeding, hauling, watering, reproducing, milking, extracting, mowing, containing, processing, drying, washing, decontaminating, conveying, heating, and cooling, and the items used for the maintenance and repair of those substances. So it's pretty broad.
So Chairman Wendell, if you think, if you think that's a technical answer, you are to hear the technical answer.
thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And you did a great job, and we appreciate what you're doing because I think it's a positive step. But I just want to finish up with the text I got from two of my neighbors, dear John Mark, and they're being a little bit coy in this, but we learned in 2016 that Americans appreciate straight talk. And I'll let you draw whatever conclusion you want to draw from that. That's their comment. But when someone reads directly from the statute, is it easy for the regular man or woman to understand? Please take this into account as you do your deliberations. So that's the view from rural Tennessee.
Thank you, Chairman Wendell. Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Chairman Wendell, I might say if it would give you or your constituents comfort, I will tell you that this bill was worked out in conjunction with Farm Bureau, who have worked tirelessly in the state for years on behalf of farmers. So, and again, what we attempted to do here is just make it a level playing field for farmers, the same considerations for farmers that we give to manufacturers, and that is our attempt to do that.
No, I think you've done an excellent job, and you're not here for accolades from me, but this is a step in the right direction, and certainly my constituents appreciate it. But please keep in mind that Tennesseans that are farmers are continuing to add value to their product, and most are no longer in the wholesale business. And instead of selling wholesale mama cows or calves, many farmers, certainly the cow-calf operation, are adding another level of production, whether it's selling carcasses or finished beef or whatever the product is, because Tennesseans have pivoted on the farm from being the sellers of wholesale items, and they're value adding now, whether it's, well, you can fill in the blank, but Tennessee agriculture is changing, and I applaud the chairman for doing this because it's really helpful. And we do appreciate it. And I don't mean to be flippant when I bring the message, but this is not my comments. This is comments from people who actually get up out of the bed every morning and don't put on a suit and tie but have to go to work every day.
Thank you, Chairman Wendell. Chairman Basin, you wanted to pass? All right, Representative Sexton.
My question is for legal. Is there anything that it says in there that's not sales tax exempt? And the reason I ask that question is I'm in manufacturing, and I know that there's many things that's used in the manufacturing process that is not sales tax exempt. Things that we use to manufacture, in my case, upholstered furniture, is not sales tax exempt. Our machinery is, but everything else that we use in terms of office supplies, I'm not sure about computers, but copy machines, there's many, many things that are not sales tax exempt. So when we're comparing it to manufacturing, I just wonder if that removes anything from the farming. But I'm sure since you worked with Farm Bureau, that's probably not the case. But just ask legal if there's anything that they can point out that it doesn't cover.
Mr. Hayes, you're recognized.
Representative Sexton, it specifically excludes by saying it does not include automobiles, trucks, household appliances, and gasoline or diesel used in vehicles operated on the public highways of the state. Those are the specific exemptions. And of course, to comply with all this, they have to receive a certificate from the Commissioner of Agriculture.
Representative Sexton. All right, further discussion. Again, we're on the amendment. Further discussion. Seeing none, we're now voting on the amendment drafting code 017000 to House Bill 2883. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. And we are on amendment number 2. Amendment number 2 is by Leader Lamberth. And Leader Lamberth, let's make sure that we have this drafting code correct.
What I have, Mr. Chairman, is 017505.
He's doing it. Okay. Yep, that's what I have, 017505. Is there a motion second on the amendment? We have a motion second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding of the amendment, it restates the amendment that we just heard, as well as added in an exemption under the grocery tax for vending machines. And that is the primary change in the amendment, is that vending machines would not be included in the grocery tax. That was never intended.
All right, thank you very much, members. You've heard the description. Any discussion? Question's been called. Objection called on the question. Seeing none, we're now voting on drafting code 017505 onto House Bill 2883. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. Chair Lady, you are recognized. All right, members, you've heard the discussion. Any further discussion on House Bill 2883? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2883, moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2883 moves on to calendar and rules. All right, that brings us to item number 3 on our calendars, House Bill 2886 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. You have a motion to second. You are recognized. And it looks like we do have an amendment, and we're just going to verify that amendment by Chair Lady Hazelwood of drafting code 017002. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do we have a motion to second? We have a motion to second. You're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the amendment does make the bill. This is just the bond bill we pass every year. We always do this primarily for the Department of Transportation so that should they need to, they could get bonds for highways. We've never had to use it because the Department of Transportation, we fund our highways, as you know, as we go. But we do this as a protection measure should there be a difficulty in cash flow or whatever. In addition to that, there's $500 million allocated to the Metro government of Nashville and Davidson County, bonds that would be issued for the construction of a dome sports stadium should all of the other pieces of that puzzle come together. And it authorizes the funding board to issue bond amounts not to exceed 2.5% of the amount specified above for funding discounts and cost of issuance. And cancels bonds authorized to be issued by Public Chapter 758 of 2020. And again, this is an authorization. It doesn't mean that these bonds will be issued. It simply authorizes the state to do so if needed.
All right. Thank you, Chair Lady. Members, you've heard the description. Question has been called. Any objection? Calling the question. We do have objection. Do we have 3 hands that object? We do have 3 hands, so we're going to vote on that. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Question has been called, and now we will now vote on the amendment. Again, that is drafting code 017002. All those in favor of this amendment going on to House Bill 2886, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are back on the bill. The motion passes. We're back on the bill as amended, and you are recognized, Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Again, Mr. Chairman, the amendment makes the bill, and I would ask for passage.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, further discussion. Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the chance to be able to speak. As I stated yesterday in Finance Sub, and I'm sure most people were watching at that point, I have expressed my concerns about this bond issue for the Titan Stadium. I still have the same concerns. Nothing has changed. There's not been anything presented to me that shows that this is actually a good deal for the taxpayers of Tennessee. No one has been able to show me where this is something that we're supposed to be doing as the state of Tennessee by our Constitution. Our citizens stop me in the street and tell me this is not a good idea. Surely y'all are not considering this. They know this is not a good deal. They know this is not something that's going to pan out. There's too many ifs here. We have no assurance that a team is even going to stay here to play in this stadium. We have no assurance that the city of Nashville is going to come up with their portion of the funds to take care of their part of the puzzle, as was talked about yesterday. There's no assurance that we're going to have venues come to this state and bring their fans and their money to this state. And another thing that my citizens are noticing is that hotel motel taxes, as a result of this whole big plan, are going to go up here in Nashville again, as high as it already is. And the city of Nashville will not be paying for that. It's going to be us. It's going to be my citizens that are going to be paying that tax to do Nashville's portion. So this whole deal, I'm not in favor of. There's study after study after study that shows after the fact, not predictions, but after the fact, that these deals do not work out for the taxpayers. If this is such a grand, fantastic deal, we would have venture capitalists literally standing at the door trying to fight us from doing a bond issue so that they could jump in and make the money off of this deal. That's what we're facing here. But it's not. It's not a good deal for anybody to invest in. And that's why they're having to come to the taxpayers and to get us to foot the bill. And I'm not for it. And I would hope that my colleagues would see the wisdom in voting against this bill. And let's not issue the bonds or even authorize issuing the bonds for this venture. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Todd. Further discussion? Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I don't want to belabor the point, but as Leader Camper said earlier today, not everybody serves in the subcommittee, but I had the opportunity to ask the chair lady about how we fund roads in Tennessee. As most of you know, that we pay for our roads as we go, but every year this committee passes a bond bill in order for us to ensure that we're paving our building new roads across the state. And even though we issue those authorize those bonds, we simply don't issue those bonds. And so this bill would allow for an authorization of those bonds, but that doesn't mean those bonds will be utilized. And so I think it's really important for us to know that just because we authorize the bonds, it doesn't mean that we're actually going to issue those. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Chairman. One quick question regarding the bonds, and my concern with the plan with the Titan Stadium is that, of course, the existing bonds that funded the existing stadium is still outstanding. There's no way to prepay those because there's prepayment penalties, et cetera. People buy bonds, they buy them for a certain term. They want the interest, et cetera, for that fixed income that they buy the bonds for. So my question is, if this passes, is there any possible way, I don't know if this is a question for the sponsor or a question for legal on how these bonds work. If we're first money in, can we be first money out? In other words, can these be paid off early, where if Tennessee puts up $500 million for this deal for the Titan Stadium, can we be first money out under any sort of bonds that we issue under this issuance? I don't know who can answer that question, but that's
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
I'm not sure I can answer the question, but in terms of, can we stipulate in bonds that we're first money in, first money out, or prepaid? But what we can do is this is an authorization for the bonds up to a maximum amount. There's still a lot of conversation to be had. Should this deal go forward, I doubt very seriously that the Titans are going to be ready for these bonds to be issued before we're back here next year. We can talk about whether we want to do some or all of this in cash. If we still have the cash available, we can drill down into that at that point. Because, and I would point out, there were in some comments earlier concerns about our debt and the fact that we are the lowest per capita debt in the country. In speaking with our constitutional officers, we are assured that even if we issue these bonds at the interest rate that we're proposing, which is, as I believe Chairman Williams mentioned earlier, it's highly unlikely that we would have to pay 11% on a bond. But even if we did that, we would still be the lowest per capita tax state in the country. That's not going to change that. For many reasons. One, because we are paying off debt, each year. So there's less outstanding debt, even if we should take more debt on. And because we have such headroom between where we are and where any of our sister states are. So it is not going to impinge any way on our standing in terms of low debt.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the response.
Representative Sparks.
I just wanted to, for the record, I'm proud of the state, proud of our governor. I think he's a great guy, and respect what he's doing. But I have some concerns, just like Representative Sexton, Garrett, Representative Todd. I live right outside of Metro Nashville. Throughout the years, I've seen our economy change, but I've seen a lot of folks that are just left out. And I think it's the middle class that's just left out. I just don't see how this really benefits my community. Metro has a housing crisis, and it's only going to get worse. I don't see how Metro is going to continue on. They just purchased Hickory Hollow Mall. I don't see how they're going to continue And then how much stake do they got in this game? I always like Proverbs, it says there's wisdom in the multitude of counselors. So I like to listen to those counselors. One counselor I did listen to was interviewed by.
Representative Sparks, can we please stick on the bill?
Okay, I'm just going to quote an economist. I think that's very important when you're talking about $500 million worth of bonds. It's economist, Vanderbilt University, Professor John Sigmund pointed out, building a new is almost inevitable a loss for the city because the entire cost of that new stadium is being outweighed by the incremental benefits of having that new stadium versus the old stadium. And most of those benefits that come from a new stadium are actually created by the old stadium. So that's some words of wisdom from an economist at Vanderbilt. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sparks. Further discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2886, moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2886 moves to calendar and rules. All right, that brings us to item number 4 on our calendars, House Bill 2884 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. We have a motion second. We have a motion second. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This just authorizes the index of appropriations from state tax revenues for fiscal year 21-22 to exceed the index of estimated growth in the state's economy by 16.08%.
All right, thank you for this description of House Bill 2884. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2884, moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2884 moves to calendar and rules. All right, item 5 on our calendars, House Bill 2885 by Chair Lady Hazelwood. We have a motion second. We have a motion second. Chair Lady Hazelwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Hopp, for your positive vote. This is similar to the bill that we just passed in that it authorizes the index of appropriations for, it regards this fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year, 2022, 2023. And it would authorize the index of appropriations from state tax revenues to exceed the index of estimated growth by 0.5%.
All right, thank you very much. Members, you've heard the description on House Bill 2885. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're now voting on House Bill 2885, moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 2885 moves to calendar and rules. All right, members, give us just a second.
Thank you, members, for your indulgence as we make sure that we're operating properly here. At this point, with no other business to come before the committee at this time, we will recess until 2 p.m. Finance is recessed until 2 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you.